The television studio fell into stunned silence as Congresswoman Maxine Waters' words hung in the air like poison gas. "You're nothing but a failed politician, a washed-up Secret Service agent who got rejected by the American people 3 times. You have no business questioning anyone in Congress. You're an embarrassment to law enforcement. Go back to your podcast basement where you belong." The audience of America Debates, cable news's highest-rated primetime forum, collectively held its breath. Some gasped. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The host, veteran journalist Patricia Morrison, opened her mouth to intervene, but something in Dan Bongino's expression made her pause. He sat perfectly still, hands folded on the debate table, his posture unchanged from the military bearing he'd maintained throughout the Congresswoman's 10-minute tirade. His expression remained calm, almost serene. But his eyes? Those were different. They'd gone cold and hard, like steel forged in fire. "Congresswoman Waters," he said quietly, his voice carrying the controlled authority of someone who'd once protected presidents, "I've been called worse by better people." The audience tittered nervously. Bongino leaned forward slightly, still composed, still calm. "You've spent the last 15 minutes attacking my character, my credentials, my service to this country. You've questioned my integrity, my intelligence, and my patriotism." He paused, letting the moment breathe. "I came here tonight to discuss government accountability and ethics in Congress. You've decided to make this personal." He reached into the leather portfolio beside his chair and extracted a thick folder of documents. "So let's make it personal, Congresswoman. Since you've opened this door, let's talk about your record. And unlike your speeches," he placed the folder on the table with a decisive thump, "I brought receipts." Maxine Waters' eyes flickered to the folder, then back to Bongino's face. Her expression shifted from triumphant to wary in less than a second. Patricia Morrison seized the moment. "Gentlemen, lady, I think we should—" "No," Bongino said firmly, his gaze never leaving Waters. "The Congresswoman started this conversation. She gets to finish it." The evening had begun with such promise. America Debates had positioned itself as the last bastion of civil political discourse in a media landscape dominated by echo chambers and partisan warfare. The show's format was simple: 2 opposing viewpoints, 1 neutral moderator, 90 minutes of uninterrupted conversation. No shouting, no commercial breaks during discussions. Just ideas clashing in real time before a live studio audience and millions of viewers at home. Tonight's topic: government accountability and ethics in Congress. Dan Bongino had arrived early, as was his habit from his Secret Service days. At 50 years old, he moved with the discipline and efficiency of someone who'd spent decades in law enforcement. NYPD officer, federal agent, Presidential Protection Detail for George W. Bush and Barack Obama. 3 unsuccessful congressional campaigns. Cancer survivor. And now, one of the most popular conservative commentators in America, with a podcast that regularly topped the charts. He'd worn a dark suit, crisp white shirt, understated tie. Professional, respectful. This wasn't his podcast studio where he could let loose. This was neutral ground, and he understood the importance of optics. Maxine Waters had arrived exactly on time, surrounded by an entourage of staffers. At 87 years old, she remained a force in Democratic politics, the ranking member of the House Financial Services Committee, having previously chaired it. Representing California's 43rd Congressional District since 1991, she'd become a hero to progressive activists and a lightning rod for conservatives. Her tenure in various California districts stretched back to 1976 in the state assembly, making her one of the longest-serving elected officials in the state. She'd worn a vibrant purple suit with bold jewelry, her signature style. The resistance persona she'd cultivated during and after the Trump administration had made her a celebrity among the left, earning her the affectionate nickname Auntie Maxine from millennials who appreciated her combative approach to politics. The pre-show pleasantries had been minimal but cordial. A handshake, brief nods, then they'd taken their positions at the curved debate table, separated by Patricia Morrison's moderator station. "Good evening," Morrison had begun, her voice steady and authoritative. "Welcome to America Debates. I'm Patricia Morrison. Tonight, we're discussing a topic that concerns Americans across the political spectrum: accountability and ethics in government. With me are two individuals with strong opinions on this subject." She gestured to her right. Dan Bongino, former Secret Service agent, best-selling author, and host of The Dan Bongino Show, one of America's most listened-to political podcasts. Bongino had nodded acknowledgement to the camera and audience. And to my left, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, representing California's 43rd District and ranking member of the House Financial Services Committee, currently in her 18th term in Congress. Waters had smiled broadly, waving to the audience with the practiced ease of a career politician. Morrison had outlined the ground rules: respectful discourse, equal time, fact-based arguments. The audience would remain silent until the final Q&A segment. Mr. Bongino, let's begin with you. You've been vocal about what you see as corruption in Congress. Can you elaborate? Bongino had taken a breath, organizing his thoughts. Thank you, Patricia. Look, I spent my career in law enforcement. I investigated federal crimes. I protected presidents from both parties. And what I've seen in recent years is a troubling pattern of lawmakers using their positions for personal enrichment while their constituents struggle. He'd been measured, professional, citing general examples without naming names: the system of earmarks, the revolving door between Congress and lobbying firms, the curious timing of stock trades by members of Congress just before major market-moving legislation. We need transparency, he'd concluded. We need enforcement of existing ethics rules. And we need voters to hold their representatives accountable, regardless of party. Morrison had nodded, then turned to Waters. Congresswoman, your response? That's when things had taken a turn. Waters hadn't addressed his arguments. Instead, she'd attacked him personally. Miss Morrison, I find it rich that Mr. Bongino here wants to lecture anyone about ethics. This is a man who spent years on Fox News spreading conspiracy theories about the 2020 election. A man who was banned from YouTube for promoting dangerous misinformation. A man who ran for Congress 3 times and lost every single race because the American people saw right through him. Bongino had remained calm, his Secret Service training kicking in. Don't react, don't escalate. Let them show who they are. But Waters hadn't finished. He has the audacity to question the integrity of public servants who've dedicated their lives to their communities. I've been serving the people of California for nearly 50 years. 50 years. And this right-wing podcaster thinks he can sit here and question my ethics? She turned to face him directly, her voice rising. You're a failed politician. You're a Secret Service reject who couldn't even win a congressional race in Florida. Florida, one of the reddest states in the country. You lost in Maryland twice, then you moved to Florida and still lost. The voters spoke, Mr. Bongino. They didn't want you. The audience had stirred uncomfortably. Morrison had tried to interject. Congresswoman, let's focus on the issues. No, I'm not done. Waters had been warming up now, feeding off her own rhetoric. This man has spent years attacking Democrats, attacking black women in Congress, attacking anyone who doesn't bow down to Donald Trump. He's dangerous. He spreads lies, and he has no business questioning anyone in Congress. She'd leaned forward, delivering what she clearly thought would be the knockout blow. You're nothing but a failed politician, a washed-up Secret Service agent who got rejected by the American people 3 times. You have no business questioning anyone in Congress. You're an embarrassment to law enforcement. Go back to your podcast basement, where you belong. And that's when the silence had fallen. That's when Dan Bongino had reached for his folder. That's when everything changed. Congresswoman Waters, Bongino said quietly, I've been waiting a long time for someone to give me this opportunity. He opened the folder, his movements deliberate and controlled. Since you've opened this door, let's walk through it together. Let's talk about your record of public service. He pulled out the first document, holding it up for the camera to see. Let's start with something you're quite familiar with, banking, specifically One United Bank. Do you remember One United, Congresswoman? Waters's expression flickered. That matter was thoroughly investigated years ago. Yes or no, Congresswoman? Bongino's voice remained calm but firm. Did your husband, Sidney Williams, serve on the board of directors for One United Bank? The situation was complex. It's a yes or no question. He waited, letting the silence do the work. Yes, he served on the board, but... Thank you. Bongino pulled out another document. And in September 2008, at the height of the financial crisis, did you arrange a meeting between Treasury Secretary Henry Paulson and representatives from the National Bankers Association? Waters shifted in her seat. I was advocating for all minority-owned banks. I didn't ask what you were advocating for. I asked if you arranged the meeting. Yes or no? Yes, but... Thank you. Another document. And at that meeting, did the discussion center primarily on One United Bank? There were several banks discussed. Congresswoman, according to the House Ethics Committee's own report, which I have right here, the discussion centered on One United Bank, the same bank where your husband served on the board, the same bank where you and your husband held stock worth at least $500,000, correct? Waters's jaw tightened. My husband's business dealings were directly connected to your congressional intervention. Bongino was in his element now, prosecutor mode fully engaged. In December 2008, One United Bank received $12 million in TARP bailout funds. $12 million. He pulled out yet another document, this one highlighted in yellow. But here's what's interesting, Congresswoman. In October 2008, 2 months before that bailout, federal regulators had accused One United's management of unsound banking practices and excessive executive perks. The bank was failing. It should never have qualified for TARP funds. The financial crisis affected many minority-owned institutions. I'm sure it did. Bongino's tone remained even, but there was steel underneath. But most of those institutions didn't have a congresswoman married to a board member personally arranging meetings with the Treasury Secretary, did they? The audience was dead silent now, every eye riveted on the exchange. Bongino pulled out another sheet. Let me read you something, Congresswoman. This is an email from your Chief of Staff, Mikhail Moore, who also happens to be your grandson, sent around the same time. The subject line reads, and I quote, One United is in trouble. He looked up from the paper. Your grandson, serving as your Chief of Staff, was emailing about One United being in trouble. You were arranging meetings with Treasury officials. Your husband was on the board. You held significant stock. And then miraculously, the failing bank got 12 million taxpayer dollars. Waters's face had gone rigid. The House Ethics Committee investigated this and, yes, let's talk about that investigation. Bongino was ready for this. In August 2010, the House Ethics Committee charged you with 3 violations: violating the rule that members must behave in a manner that reflects credibly on the House, using your influence for personal benefit, and dispensing special favors. 3 separate violations. Those charges were eventually dropped. After 2 years of investigation, the committee found that you thought you were acting for all minority banks, so they gave you a pass. But they found your grandson, your chief of staff, had been actively involved in helping One United specifically. He received a letter of reproval. Bongino leaned forward. So let me get this straight, Congresswoman. You arranged a meeting for a bank where your husband served on the board and where you held significant financial interest. Your grandson, your employee, worked to help that specific bank. That bank got $12 million in taxpayer money. And the only reason you weren't formally sanctioned was because you claimed you didn't know you were helping your own family's financial interests. He let that sink in for a moment. Congresswoman, you called me an embarrassment to law enforcement. I'm a former federal investigator. In my world, we call what I just described a textbook case of conflict of interest, at minimum. The studio audience remained frozen. Patricia Morrison looked like she wanted to intervene but couldn't find the opening. Waters tried to recover. This is why Congress is broken, because people like you come on TV and dig up old, settled matters. Old? Bongino's eyebrows rose. Congresswoman, without your intervention, your husband's investment in that bank would have been worthless. The bank was failing. You helped save it. Your family's financial interest was preserved. That's not old. That's corruption. And it's never settled until we talk about it honestly. He gathered the One United documents and set them aside. But you're right about one thing, Congresswoman. This is old. So let's talk about something more recent. Let's talk about your daughter. Waters's eyes widened slightly. She knew what was coming. Karen Waters, Bongino said, pulling out a new stack of documents. Your daughter. Let's discuss her very lucrative relationship with your campaign. He held up a Federal Election Commission filing, the pages clearly visible to the cameras. Since 2003, that's 22 years, your campaign committee, Citizens for Waters, has paid your daughter Karen and her company, Progressive Connections, more than $1.2 million. The number hung in the air like an accusation. $1.2 million, Congresswoman. From your campaign to your daughter, let that sink in for the folks watching at home. Waters straightened in her chair. My daughter runs a legitimate slate mailer operation. Oh, I know she does. Let's talk about these slate mailers. Bongino pulled out another document. For those watching who might not know, slate mailers are essentially sample ballots with endorsements. And Congresswoman Waters has created a very interesting system. He turned to the camera, explaining as if teaching a class. Here's how it works. If you're a politician in California and you want Maxine Waters' endorsement, your campaign pays her campaign. Then her campaign pays her daughter Karen to manage the production of these mailers that go out to 200,000 voters in South Central Los Angeles. He turned back to Waters. You're essentially selling your endorsements, Congresswoman, and your daughter gets paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to facilitate it. This was approved by the Federal Election Commission in 2004. Legal doesn't mean ethical, Congresswoman. Bongino cut her off sharply. Let's look at the numbers, shall we? He began reading from the FEC filings. In the 2019 to 2020 election cycle, Karen Waters received $240,000. In the 2021-2022 cycle, 192,000. Let's talk about who's paying for these endorsements. Another document came out. Senator Kamala Harris, now Vice President Harris, paid your campaign $63,000 over 2 election cycles to appear on your mailers. Governor Gavin Newsom paid $45,000 when he was running for lieutenant governor. Los Angeles District Attorney George Gascon paid $36,500. Bongino looked up from the papers. Congresswoman, you're charging politicians up to $45,000 for your endorsement, and your daughter is getting rich managing the process. This isn't public service. This is a family business. Waters tried to interrupt. The FEC approved. I don't care what the FEC approved. Bongino's voice rose slightly for the first time, controlled passion breaking through. The FEC sets the legal standard. I'm talking about the ethical standard. You're the ranking member of the Financial Services Committee. You oversee banks, financial institutions, campaign finance, and you've created a system where your family directly profits from your political position. He pulled out yet another document. Let me ask you something, Congresswoman. According to your own campaign filings, at the end of the 2018 cycle, your campaign owed your daughter $183,000, $183,000 in debt. To your own daughter. Campaign debts are common. To your daughter, Congresswoman, your campaign was in debt to your family member. Do you not see the problem here? The audience was completely riveted now. Waters had stopped trying to smile, her expression grim and defensive. Bongino wasn't finished. And here's the beautiful part. Well, beautiful if you like irony. You hold yourself up as a champion of campaign finance reform. You've spent years criticizing Republicans for dark money and corporate influence. But you've been running what the Sunlight Foundation calls a way to take large sums of money from state and federal political committees that seemingly exceed FEC contribution limits but are perfectly legal under federal election law. He leaned forward again, his voice dropping to that quiet, dangerous level. Congresswoman, if a Republican member of Congress had paid their daughter over $1 million from campaign funds, what would you say about them? Would you call them corrupt? Would you demand an investigation? Would you go on MSNBC and call for their resignation? Waters' hands gripped the arms of her chair. This is a racist attack. No! Bongino's voice was sharp as a blade. This is Federal Election Commission data. Mathematics isn't racist, Congresswoman. Numbers don't have political affiliation. Your campaign paid your daughter $1.2 million over 22 years. That's a fact. It's in black and white in your own FEC filings. He gathered those documents and pulled out fresh ones. But since you brought up investigations, let's talk about your most recent problem with the FEC. April 2025. Bongino said, holding up a document marked with the FEC seal. Just 6 months ago, the Federal Election Commission made a ruling about your campaign. Waters' expression went carefully blank. The FEC found, and I'm reading directly from their conciliation agreement here, that your campaign knowingly accepted $19,000 in excessive contributions during the 2020 campaign. Knowingly. That's the FEC's word, not mine. He set that document down and picked up another. But that's not all. Your campaign also made $7,000 in prohibited cash disbursements. Specifically, you reimbursed get-out-the-vote canvassers with cash payments over $100 each. That's illegal, Congresswoman. Federal campaign finance law explicitly prohibits cash payments over $100. The pandemic made it difficult for canvassers to process checks. Waters started. Everyone had the pandemic, Congresswoman. Bongino's tone was withering. Every single campaign in America was operating during the pandemic. Somehow, they all managed to follow the law. But not you, not the ranking member of financial services, not the woman who oversees financial regulations. He pulled out the final page of the FEC ruling. The FEC fined your campaign $68,000. Your attorney told them these financial errors were not willful or purposeful errors. Isn't that convenient? When your family makes $1 million from your campaign, that's good business. But when you violate federal campaign finance law, those are just innocent errors. Bongino set the documents down and looked directly at Waters. Congresswoman, let me establish a pattern here, because I think the American people need to see it clearly. He began ticking off points on his fingers. 2010. House Ethics Committee charges you with 3 violations related to the One United scandal. 2011. Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, a left-leaning watchdog group, names you one of the most corrupt members of Congress. 2004 through 2025. Your daughter receives over $1.2 million from your campaign. 2025. The FEC fines you $68,000 for knowingly violating campaign finance laws. He spread his hands. This isn't one mistake, Congresswoman. This is a pattern, a decades-long pattern of using your office and your campaign to enrich your family while skirting and sometimes breaking ethics and campaign finance rules. Waters tried to respond. My record of public service. Let's talk about that record, Bongino interrupted. Let's talk about what your constituents have gotten for your 50 years of public service, because the numbers there are interesting, too. Bongino pulled out what looked like real estate listings and demographic data. Congresswoman, you represent California's 43rd Congressional District. Some of the neighborhoods you represent include parts of south-central Los Angeles, Watts, Hawthorne, Inglewood, Gardena, working-class communities, historically Black and Latino communities, communities that have struggled with poverty, crime, and lack of opportunity. He looked up at her. But you don't actually live in your district, do you? Waters stiffened. My home was in my district when I purchased it. That's not what I asked. Bongino's voice remained level. I asked if you live in your district now. Simple question. Do you currently live in California's 43rd Congressional District? Redistricting moved the boundaries. Yes or no, Congresswoman? A long pause. No. After redistricting, my home is technically in the 37th District. Thank you for that honesty. Bongino pulled out photos. Let's talk about your home. You live in Windsor Square, one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in Los Angeles. Your home is valued at approximately $6 million. $6 million. He held up the photos for the camera. It's a beautiful home, Congresswoman. 6,000 square feet, gated, secure, in a neighborhood that is, according to census data, just 6% Black. Your district, by contrast, is 23.6% Black. So you represent one of the highest concentrations of African American residents in California. But you live in a neighborhood that is 94% non-Black. Waters opened her mouth to protest, but Bongino kept going. Now, let's talk about the district you do represent. The district you've represented in various forms since 1991, 34 years. He pulled out demographic statistics. In California's 43rd District, 1 in 5 people live below the poverty line. 1 in 3 children live in poverty. The median household income is well below the California average. Violent crime has increased significantly in recent years. Your constituents live in neighborhoods where they need bars on their windows for safety. He looked directly at Waters. Meanwhile, you live in a $6 million mansion with a security gate in a neighborhood that doesn't even vote for you, Congresswoman. How does a public servant with a congressional salary of $174,000 afford a $6 million home? My husband had a successful career. I'm sure he did. Former NFL player, Mercedes dealer, U.S. ambassador to the Bahamas. That's all public record. But let's be honest about what else contributes to your wealth. Bongino gestured to the earlier documents. Your daughter's million-dollar payments from your campaign probably help. The insider access and business opportunities that come with being one of the most powerful members of Congress probably help. The Los Angeles Times reported back in 2004 that your family members had made more than $1 million over 8 years doing business with companies and causes you helped. He leaned forward. Your constituents have bars on their windows. You have a security gate around your mansion. Your constituents struggle to find jobs. Your daughter gets $200,000 a year from your campaign. Your constituents' schools are failing. You've been their representative for 34 years. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. What have they gotten, Congresswoman? What have they gotten for your 50 years of public service? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like your family got rich while their community got poorer. The audience was completely silent. Several people had their hands over their mouths. The tension in the studio was palpable. Waters's face had gone through several shades of emotion: anger, defensiveness, and now something that looked like barely controlled fury. "How dare you?" she said, her voice shaking. "How dare you question my commitment to my community? I have spent my life fighting for social justice." "Have you?" Bongino interrupted. "Because I look at your district, the district you've represented for 34 years, and I see poverty, crime, failing schools, and struggling families. I see bars on windows. I see people who can't afford what you spend on your landscaping." He leaned back in his chair, his composure completely restored. "I see a community that has been fighting, Congresswoman, fighting to survive, fighting to get ahead, fighting against systems that keep them down. But I don't see you fighting for them. I see you fighting for your family's bank account. I see you fighting to protect cop killers. I see you fighting to silence people who ask questions." Waters stood up abruptly. "I don't have to sit here and listen to this. Actually, you do." Bongino didn't raise his voice. "You came on this program to debate government accountability. I'm holding you accountable, with documents, with facts, with your own public record." "This interview is over," Waters began, removing her microphone. "Of course it is." Bongino remained seated, perfectly calm. "When the facts come out, you leave. When someone brings receipts, you walk away. That's what you do, Congresswoman. That's what you've always done. Hide behind your position, your seniority, your identity, and hope no one asks the hard questions." Waters was moving toward the exit now, her staff scrambling to keep up. Patricia Morrison finally found her voice. "Congresswoman Waters, please." But Waters was gone, disappearing backstage, leaving her microphone on the table. The studio audience sat in stunned silence for a moment. Then, slowly, applause began. It started with one person, then two, then a section of the audience, until half the studio was standing and clapping. The other half sat silent, some looking uncomfortable, others angry. Patricia Morrison turned to the camera, her professional composure barely intact. "We're going to take a brief pause. When we return, we'll continue with Mr. Bongino and take audience questions." The camera cut away. After the commercial break, Dan Bongino sat alone at the debate table. Patricia Morrison looked uncomfortable but professional. "Mr. Bongino, Congresswoman Waters has chosen not to return for the remainder of the program. Would you like to make any closing statement?" Bongino took a breath, organizing his thoughts. Yes, thank you. He looked directly into the camera. I didn't come here tonight to destroy anyone. I came to discuss government accountability and ethics in Congress. Congresswoman Waters decided to make this conversation personal. She attacked my character, my career, my service to this country. She called me a failed politician, a washed-up agent, an embarrassment. He paused. So I responded with facts. Every document I cited tonight is public record. Every payment to her daughter is in FEC filings. Every scandal is documented. Every ethics charge is real. Americans can verify every single thing I said tonight. He leaned forward. Congresswoman Waters said I have no business questioning Congress. But ma'am, I spent my career in law enforcement. I protected presidents. I investigated federal crimes. I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution, and part of that defense is holding public officials accountable when they abuse their positions. His voice became more passionate. I know corruption when I see it. I investigated it for years, and tonight, America saw it too. Congresswoman Waters has been in Congress for 34 years. Her district is poorer. Her family is richer. Her constituents struggle while she lives in a $6 million mansion. Her daughter has made over $1 million from her campaign. Her husband's bank got $12 million in bailout money after she intervened. He shook his head. That's not public service. That's a business model. That's using a position of trust for private gain. And it should be unacceptable regardless of party, race, gender, or seniority. Bongino's expression hardened. Congresswoman Waters called me dangerous. The only thing dangerous here is letting politicians like her keep getting away with it for decades. The only thing dangerous is a system where asking questions gets you called a racist, where presenting evidence gets you accused of attacks, where holding people accountable means you're divisive. He pointed to where Waters had been sitting. She walked out, rather than defend her record. She left, rather than answer questions. That should tell you everything you need to know. His voice softened slightly. I ran for Congress 3 times and lost 3 times. Yes, I'm a failed politician, but I can look at myself in the mirror. I can face my daughters. I can talk to the cops and agents I worked with. I never lost my integrity. I never used my position to enrich my family. I never called for harassment of people I disagreed with. I never defended a cop killer. He stood up, buttoning his suit jacket. So yes, Congresswoman Waters, I failed at politics, but you've succeeded at something far worse. You've succeeded at corruption. You've succeeded at avoiding accountability. You've succeeded at making millions while your constituents make do. He looked directly into the camera one last time. And America just watched you run away when someone finally brought the receipts.